But as y'all know, it has to be voted on by the people when we ever deal with tax issues. And let me explain a little bit about tangible personal property. We're all aware of real property. Real property is buildings that are attached to the land, and that is taxed at the local government level. They do valuations and millage rates, and you're charged a tax on an annual basis for that. And that funds the state government, the local governments, that funds local governments. Tangible personal property, though, is a different entity in itself. It's personal property. That is like furniture. That is like computer equipment. That is things that you can actually pick up and move from one location to the other. And when people buy tangible personal property at the store where they buy it, they pay sales tax on it originally. So it already has a sales tax component on it. So then local governments assess the value of this tangible personal property, and this tangible personal property, define what it is. It's equipment, it's computers, it's furniture. In the case of maybe a hair salon, it could be hair dryers, curling irons, the stools that the technicians sit on, and the chairs that the clients sit on. These things are tangible personal property, and on an annual basis, they are assessed, and these small businesses pay tax on that in the same way you would pay a tax on your house at a local community. Well, currently, there is an exemption. So if you own or have valued tangible personal property at $7,500 or less, there's no tax on it. And what this measure does is it raises that exemption from $7,500 to $20,000. The reason we picked that number was basically a compromise. We wanted to go a little bit higher, but were unable to. Local governments were neutral on this. At first, they were, concerned that they would lose a substantial amount of money, but it was negligible. So our local governments, our ACCG and the Municipal Association, were neutral on the measure. And with that being said, by raising it to $20,000, we're trying to keep up a little bit with inflation. We've all been hurt tremendously by inflation these last few years. And so the equipment that people have in small businesses, whether that be an accountant, as I said earlier, a hair salon, a barber shop, all this costs a lot more today than it did, 5 years ago. Many times double or even triple. And so with that being said, we felt that by going to $7,500 to $20,000, that would give some relief to small business. And as chairman of small business, I felt that that was my responsibility and duty. And I was happy to move forward with this measure. And I encourage all the citizens in the state to, give our small business owners a little bit of a break. They are the backbone of our economy. They hire the most people. They are the most innovative. They are the hardest working. And you'll find that many small businesses, that becomes a way of life. It's not just a career. So with that being said, I ask you all to vote for House Bill 808 as the measure on the ballot, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
And Chairman Cheokas talked about the third ballot measure, and if an exemption is increased, then the tax bill decreases. And there are two other tax measures on the ballot statewide. The first is House Resolution 1022. That is the statewide homestead exemption. That was sponsored by Chair Lady Beth Camp of Middle Georgia, as well as Ways and Means Chair Shaw Blackman of Warner Robins. And in the Senate, Finance Chairman Senator Huffstetler worked on it. What this does is it says your purchase price ought to be the guidestone for your home taxation, not some artificial value. And so you take the purchase price of your home in a fair market value sale, and you limit the increases to inflation to a small percentage of 3% or less if the market value is not going up that fast. I put a video up on Matt Reeves for House Facebook page of Chairman Shaw Blackman explaining it, but here's the way it works. If your house is worth $200,000, which is about half as much as a townhouse sells for in my area these days, unfortunately, if your house is worth $200,000 and you get a 20% increase on your tax value, that would be $240,000. What this bill would do is it would take it down to 3%, which would be $206,000. Therefore, the homeowner would pay based on $206,000 and not $240,000. So it is a pro-homeowner move. As Chairman Cheokas may have mentioned, the locals can opt out of it. The local governments did have a say in the bill. So if it is passed, the locals can opt out. Additionally, locals can implement a sales tax if they are below the state maximum on sales taxes that would raise funds for the purpose of defraying and decreasing property taxes. Therefore, the sales tax could fund local government rather than property tax, so that homeowners are not taxed out of their homes. That is the first measure on the ballot, the statewide homestead referendum. And then the second measure on the ballot, that is the statewide tax court. And I see that Leanna Brown with the Metro Atlanta Chamber is here on the Zoom. I would commend the work they did. That was sponsored by Chairman Chuck Martin of Alpharetta, former mayor of Alpharetta, and I might add, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, he was on the 1980 National Championship Georgia Bulldog team, and he implemented this tax court because he represents Fulton County. And right now, there is an administrative agency, the tax tribunal, where if taxpayers want to have their day in court, if they disagree with the government, they go to this tax tribunal that is part of the Department of Revenue and the Office of State Administrative Hearings, and it is not a full-fledged court. And if you're unsatisfied with that today, you appeal to Fulton County Superior Court, which is trying the Young Thug trial and has many, cases with high dockets. So taxpayers have felt like they don't really get their day in court. This tax court will set up a full-fledged court where taxpayers can have their day in court. And if they're dissatisfied there, they get to go to the Court of Appeals rather than Fulton County Superior Court. So it's very efficient. It's very pro-taxpayer. And those are the three ballot measures. I've gotten more questions on these three ballot measures than any other thing on the ballot this year. My constituents wanted to know about it. So I'm glad that Chairman Cheokas was willing to have this press conference to get the word out on these three ballot measures. And with that, we're glad to take questions to be able to get as much information out on these three ballot measures as possible. Any questions? All right. Kurt Yeomans, Gwinnett Daily Post. I bet you've got a question from covering this from the Gwinnett County perspective, because I learned we got 125,000 homeowners in Gwinnett County because we lowered the property taxes for homeowners in Gwinnett County this year in May. That got 75% of the vote. It was the first time that had been done in 36 years. And so we've got a lot of homeowners here and a lot of folks who have tax issues. Chairman Cheokas gave some examples of personal property. Some additional things I could think of: nail salons, barbershops, agribusiness industry, even after all the growth in Atlanta, is still the biggest industry in Georgia. So all of the equipment and inventory that agribusiness and farmers have in the way of personal property is something that this does. It looks like we've got a question in the chat. Y'all are welcome to ask in the chat or live. The question I have from Daphne Young is, where can residents get the specific details you mentioned? Can you share the link? Chairman Shaw Blackman's video on the House Bill 1022, actually it's on all three, is at Matt Reeves for House on Facebook. That has a good video. It's a very short, probably 5-minute video from the House Ways and Means Chairman Shaw Blackman. I believe Representative Bethany Ballard from Houston County also has that posted on her social media. And I know the Speaker's office, the Majority Whip team, they have been compiling this. I've got a good graphic that I'd be glad to send anybody. I've got it and I can text it or email it. My text is 404-319-0245. Again, 404-319-0245. Text me and I will send you that graphic that summarizes these three ballot measures succinctly. And I'd be glad to get more detailed information to anybody who's got it. Kurt Yeomans of Gwinnett Daily Post asked, how has this been working out where it's been done in Gwinnett? And how are you looking at translating that to a statewide scale? Kurt, good question. We have a version of this in Gwinnett on the county portion of the tax bill, which is about maybe approximately a third of your tax bill. About 2/3 of your bill in Gwinnett, it goes to schools. So about a third of your tax bill is the county tax bill. The county implemented the value offset exemption about 20 years ago, and the value offset exemption is very similar to the statewide homestead exemption that is on the ballot. And what it does is it heavily weights your purchase price, and therefore you don't have a large increase on your tax bill until you sell the home. It is tied to your purchase price. It is very pro-homeowner. Another question, let's see. Okay, we don't have any more questions in the chat, and so I would open it up to anybody. Just unmute yourself and feel free to ask any questions to Small Business Chairman Cheokas or me on these tax questions. And Chairman Cheokas and I spoke with law enforcement at lunch at the Greek restaurant here in Gwinnett County, and so he's worked a lot on law enforcement compensation and other issues. So while we're on here, we're glad to address any law enforcement questions you have, because that's something he's worked a lot on as a member of the House Judiciary and House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. I'm proud to have done so also.
Well, I'm glad, Matt, that you brought that up, because our law enforcement are the unsung heroes of our communities, and that they really are the backbone. They protect us day in and day out. And I had the good fortune of chairing the Law Enforcement Compensation Committee 2 years ago. And we went around the state and talked with different law enforcement officials to find out what they thought would be a living wage for them, some of the difficulties they have in recruiting, and some of the difficulties they have in retaining talent. And so we talked about that and had a lot of great input. And we're trying at the legislative level, at the state level, to go ahead and address some of those issues. It was immediately well received, especially by Governor Brian Kemp, and we addressed our state law enforcement partners, our GBI, our natural resources, and of course our beloved state troopers. And we're able to get them some incremental increases in their pay. One of the continuing questions is they'd like for us to work on, and we have been working under Chairman John Carson, looking at a pension plan, a universal pension plan, not only for our state law enforcement stakeholders, but also for our locals, our county sheriffs and our police chiefs. They do a fantastic job. And unfortunately, their funding comes from the local communities. So we did not have a direct impact in that, but we were beating the drum on their behalf. And from what I've heard in the last 2 years, a lot of local communities have increased their spending in providing better wages for our law enforcement community at the local level. So we will still champion that. And then we're looking for ways for our young people to look at law enforcement as an opportunity for career. Our technical colleges have law enforcement academies, and I've been to several of those graduation ceremonies, and it's quite moving. And those young men and women are just eager to serve. You'll find that law enforcement officials, they're not doing this because they get paid well. They do not get paid well. They do this as a mission, as a way of giving back to their communities. And every one of them will say the same thing, that it's a strain on their families. Their families don't know how safe their loved ones will be and whether they'll come home at night or not. But they do it anyway. And so with that being said, we got to continue supporting them. We're putting out more and more law enforcement graduates from the academy so that they'll have more applicants, and training is continuing to be great in our state. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions dealing with that as well.
I'm glad once we started talking about law enforcement, everybody started asking tax questions again. So thanks, Chairman Cheokas. But some follow-up questions. Kurt Yeomans of Gwinnett Daily Post asks, is this expected to have more of an impact on homeowners and individuals or on businesses? And all of the above. On the first one, on the homestead exemption, that will benefit homeowners and owner-occupied homeowners. The second one, the tax court, that could be an individual or a business. The current caseload is about 500 or 600 cases a year. Larry O'Neill, who is the former Ways and Means chairman, he is the tax tribunal judge who has been hearing those 500 or 600 cases a year. Some of those are individuals against the Department of Revenue, but a lot of those are small businesses. The third one, Chairman Cheokas's personal property exemption, that would be primarily small business. That is a small business, just like I mentioned, agribusiness, nail salons, any small business that has equipment, inventory, something other than real estate and buildings, a bunch of inventory and contractors, their materials that they have. So that would be a small business measure. Kurt Yeomans of the Daily Post also asked, are you expecting this to help bring in new businesses or to help entrepreneurs start up a business, or what's the purpose of it? And I think the purpose of these measures is we are responding to taxpayers, to working people and small businesses saying they are feeling the pain of inflation. They are working hard, and they feel like, with all the pain of inflation, they're going backwards. Georgia's been number one in business and jobs. We got to keep it that way because people need to know they're going to be able to take home what they earn hard. So it does send the right message to businesses around the country in deciding whether to locate in Georgia. Specifically on personal property, I've been aware through practicing law in Gwinnett County for 21 years, the Freeport exemption that relates to personal property, it is a jobs engine. And there are businesses such as Porsche down near the airport and many others that locate to Georgia because of a Freeport exemption, because of our personal property tax climate. And so businesses around the country, seeing that Georgia did a favorable move to small business and to working people on personal property, on homes, on being able to have due process and have your day in court and not get some kangaroo court treatment. If you have a dispute with, a big bureaucracy and on a tax matter, I think those are things that send the right message both to current hardworking Georgians and small businesses, as well as those around the country who are tired of high taxes, crime, and regulation, and they want to move somewhere like Georgia, where we're putting the government on the side of hardworking Georgians and small businesses.
Let me add on that.
Sure.
Excuse me for interrupting, Matt, but with tangible personal property. This is the equipment that these individuals need to make a living, and they already pay a sales tax. So as we are the number one state in the nation to do business for large businesses, major industry coming, we want to be the number one state in the nation for small business. No large business just happens. It starts out as a small business. So we want to make that fertile ground. We want to allow these small businesses, these entrepreneurs to come in and not be burdened with excessive taxes as they're starting out. When they start making more and more money, they're going to expand. They'll pass that threshold of $20,000. So our local communities will more than make up for it in growth, if you ask me.
Todd DeFeo asks, on a somewhat similar note, have y'all done anything about fees for small businesses and occupational fees, particularly people working from home following COVID, something along those lines? Todd, I paraphrase that. Feel free to jump in if there's any other nuance to that question. Here's what we did on fees this term. Permit fees with building and construction, that is part of the housing affordability issue. And what we said in Georgia through a bill we passed is a permit fee or a fee must have a reasonable relationship to the governmental service being provided. It's not going to be a tax. It's not going to be a blank check because we can't afford that in Georgia. And so the fee must bear a relationship to the governmental service that's being provided. So if a locality is going to charge $100 for an occupational license fee, they've got to be able to do some accounting to explain where that is. It can't just be a tax if they're going to call it a fee. And so we did that to make sure that housing and other small business and needs are affordable. So that's one thing we've done. I would say the local licensing, that is often at the local level. But we did take a move to say on permit fees and things like that, don't overcharge taxpayers, don't make it, don't add to the pain of inflation by doing that. Another question, let's see, Chairman Rick Jaspers had a bill looking at capping such fees, and that's kind of a leading question. Yes, Chairman Jaspers and other leaders in the House are really aggressively going after fees, and certainly I think that's something that Chairman Cheokas and I are always on the lookout for. Don't overcharge Georgians. Be modest with the government, and let's pay for let's do a few things and do them well, and leave the rest of the money to working people. I see Subcommittee Chair Sue Hong and Governor's Floor Leader Sue Hong is on. I'd acknowledge that she helped out with that Gwinnett County tax cut, again, the first one in 36 years. We worked with all 21 House members in Gwinnett, as well as the school system, and getting that achieved. And in addition to doubling the homestead exemption, that Gwinnett County move, we gave additional tax relief to teachers, to hospital employees, to law enforcement personnel, and active duty military personnel. And that was a bipartisan move. We call them public service employees. Those are the kind of people you want living in your community. We've got shortages in many of those important jobs, and we wanted them to be able to know that Gwinnett County and state government are on their side in achieving the American dream of homeownership. Gwinnett County has the biggest school system in the state, and we worked with our school system to give this homeownership move because they want to have long-term homeowners, because they're the ones who volunteer in the classroom and are long-term teachers. And if you get sick, they're the ones who care for you at the hospital. We had 8,000 active duty military personnel in Gwinnett County, even despite the fact we don't have a military base here. We found a bright Georgia Tech student helped me look that up when there were some questions about the statistics. We were calculating those numbers. It took 2 months to get that Gwinnett County property tax achieved in the legislature, and then the voters approved it with 75% of the vote. And I appreciate Floor Leader Hong for helping out with that. And she and I also worked with Representative David Clark to cut property taxes in the city of Sugar Hill. The mayor and council up there, as well as Senator Sean Still and Senator Clint Dixon, we worked on getting that on the ballot. That was approved with about 90% of the vote. That one's already been implemented. The Gwinnett County property tax cut will take effect in 2025, and it has no sunset. It is permanent. All right. Any other any other questions, either through the chat or feel free to unmute? All right. Any other questions? Last call on that. I would say for taxpayers wanting to vote on these, early voting ends Friday, November the 1st. And in Gwinnett County, we have both Saturday and Sunday voting this weekend from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at George Pierce Park, Shorty Howe Park, Pinckneyville Park, and many other early voting locations. Of course, Election Day, Tuesday, November the 5th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at your assigned voting precinct. We have another question. Could we share the video? Yes, please. I gave you the text. Feel free to email at matt.reeves@house.ga.gov. I believe we do have a recording that we will be able to share for those of you who missed the first part of the press conference. All right. Any other questions? Floor Leader Sue Hong, since you're on, can you think of any other tax measures? I guess you were there at Governor Kemp's announcement and was proud the governor made another move on income taxes, but can you think of anything additional that we worked on this term that might be on the ballot or on the horizon?
No, you've covered every single thing of it and did a very good job. Obviously, we did the tax relief. The governor announced that, so we'll be voting on that. And I think going forward, we'll be doing more tax income cuts, the rate cuts. And so I know that we'll be working on that in our future session. But good job.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions, either live or on the chat? See if anybody texted. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate members of the media tuning in. I would, again, I see Leanna Brown with Metro Atlanta Chambers on there. Would like to thank the Metro Atlanta Chamber and Leanna Brown working on the tax court and other pro-taxpayer measures. And we thank you for your time today. And I'm welcome to ask any follow-up questions that come to mind and follow up with this. Again, 404-319-0245. I'll get you that succinct graphic with the 3 ballot measures on there if you'd like that.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.